Mass phase of the national movement 1915 to 1947. Chapter 6, Mahatma Gandhi and the national movement. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, popularly known as Bapu or Mahatma Gandhi, completely dominated the Indian national movement from 1919 to 1948. That is why this period is known as the Gandhian era in Indian history. No words are enough to describe Mahatma Gandhi's contribution to India's freedom struggle. That is why the grateful nation remembers him as the father of the nation. Early life. Mahatma Gandhi was born in 1869 at Porbandar in the Kathiawad district of Gujarat. His father was the Diwan of Rajkot state. In 1888, he went to England to study law. On completing his studies, he came back to India and started practicing law at Rajkot. From 1893 to 1914, he practiced law in South Africa. In South Africa, on a journey by train from Durban to Pretoria, he was forcibly thrown out of a first class compartment, even though he had a valid ticket. Gandhiji was hurt by the racial injustice and discrimination to which Indians had to submit in South Africa. Indians could not travel with the Europeans and were not allowed to enter the hotels and clubs meant for the Europeans. Gandhiji soon became the leader of the struggle for justice in South Africa. During 1893 to 1914, he was engaged in a historic struggle against the racist authorities in South Africa. He formed the Natal Indian Congress and suffered imprisonment. He started his non-violent civil disobedience movement to protest against the discriminating treatment meted out to the Indians. The South African government had to listen to the voice of reason and in 1914 repealed most of the unjust acts against the Indians. Thus, it was during this struggle that Mahatma Gandhi evolved the technique of satyagraha, non-violent resistance based on truth and non-violence. Gandhiji returned to India in January 1915 and spent the next 4 years in studying the Indian situation. During the course of 1917 and early 1918, he was involved in 3 significant struggles in Champaran, Bihar, in Ahmedabad, and in Kheda, Gujarat. Champaran Satyagraha, 1917. Gandhiji's first great experiment in Satyagraha was accomplished in 1917 in Champaran, Bihar. The indigo cultivators of Champaran were greatly exploited by European planters. They were bound by law to grow indigo on 3 by 20th the Thinkatya system of their land and sell it to the British planters at fixed prices by them. They invited Gandhiji to take up their cause, but the district authorities banned his entry to the district. He offered satyagraha, as a result of which an inquiry was conducted into the conditions of the peasants. This helped in giving the indigo cultivators some relief. Ahmedabad Satyagraha, 1918. Gandhiji led the mill workers of Ahmedabad in a strike against the mill owners who had refused to pay them higher wages. When the workers seemed to weaken, he provided support to them by undertaking a fast, hunger strike. Afraid of the consequences, the mill owners agreed on the fourth day of Gandhiji's fast to give a 35% increase in wages. Kheda Satyagraha, 1918. Crops failed in Kheda and the peasants were not in a position to pay land revenue. The government refused to forego the land revenue. Gandhiji organized the peasants to offer satyagraha. The peasants refused to pay the revenue, and ultimately the government was forced to arrive at a settlement with the peasants. Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel became Gandhiji's follower during this struggle. These first experiments in satyagraha brought Gandhiji into close contact with the masses, both the peasants in the rural areas and the workers in the urban areas. Non-cooperation movement. During the First World War, the Congress cooperated with the British. Even Gandhiji urged the Gujarati peasants to join the army if they wanted to win Swaraj. But the events of 1919, like the Khilafat wrongs, passing of the Rowlatt Act, and the Jallianwala Bagh tragedy, greatly disillusioned Gandhiji. He turned from a cooperator to a non-cooperator and decided to start the non-cooperation movement. Non-cooperation is a way of protesting in which one does not cooperate with the evildoer. Gandhiji asked the people not to assist the foreign government to rule over them. Gandhiji said, "Non-cooperation with evil is as much a duty as cooperation with good." Causes that led to the non-cooperation movement. 1. Khilafat movement. In the First World War, Turkey was defeated and the Ottoman Empire was divided. The Sultan of Turkey, who was the Caliph, was deprived of all authority. The Caliph was looked upon by large section of the Muslims as their religious head. They felt that any weakening of the Caliph's position would adversely affect the positions of Muslims. In the First World War, the British fought against Turkey. The Muslim population in India started a powerful agitation known as the Khilafat movement. Under the leadership of Ali brothers, Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali, Maulana Azad, Hakim Ajmal Khan and Hasrat Mohini, the Khilafatis formed a three-point program. A. The Ottoman Caliph should retain his empire. B. The Caliph must be left with sufficient territory to enable him to defend the Islamic faith. And C. The Arab lands, Arabia, Syria, Iraq, Palestine, must remain under the Muslim rule. Khilafat Day was observed on October 17, 1919, and on an all India scale. Gandhiji saw in the Khilafat movement an opportunity for uniting Hindus and Muslims. He said that the Congress plea for Hindu-Muslim unity would be an empty phrase if the Hindus hold aloof from the Muslims when their vital interests are at stake. Mahatma Gandhi was elected as President of the All India Khilafat Conference in November 1919. He advised the Khilafat Committee to adopt a policy of non-cooperation with the government. By August 31st, 1920, the Khilafat non-cooperation movement started. People resigned from government services. Shops selling foreign goods were picketed. Students boycotted schools and colleges, and hartals and demonstrations were held. By the end of 1920, the Khilafat movement and the Congress non-cooperation movement merged into one nationwide movement. In 1921, the Khilafat Committee appealed to all the Muslims not to join the police and armed forces and not to pay taxes. This enraged the government. The Ali brothers were arrested and charged on charges of sedition. 2. Rowlatt Act. On receiving a report from the Sedition Committee headed by Justice Rowlatt, two bills were introduced in Central Legislature in February 1919. The purpose of the bill was to curb the growing upsurge in the country. In spite of opposition from the Indians, the Rowlatt Act was passed in March 1919. This act authorized the government to imprison any person without trial and convict him in court. The Rowlatt Act implied arrest of a person without warrant, in camera trial, that is, trial in seclusion, restrictions on movement of individuals, suspension of the right of habeas corpus. The act came like a sudden blow to the Indians, who were expecting self-governance. Gandhiji appealed to the Viceroy to withhold his consent to such measures. However, his appeal was ignored. He started Satyagraha as a challenge to the government. Number 3. The Jallianwala Bagh tragedy. A large but peaceful crowd gathered at the Jallianwala Bagh in Amritsar on April 13, 1919, to protest against the arrest of leaders like Dr. Saifuddin Kichlu and Dr. Satyapal. Jallianwala Bagh had only one exit. Its other three sides were enclosed by buildings. General Dyer, the military commander of Amritsar, surrounded the Bagh with his soldiers. After closing the exit with his troops, he ordered them to shoot at the crowd. The troops kept on firing till the ammunition was exhausted. About 1,000 innocent demonstrators were killed and many more wounded. The conscience of the nation was shaken at the massacre of innocent people. After the massacre, the British government made a half-hearted attempt at constitutional reforms, but it also made it clear that it had no intention of parting with political power or sharing it with Indians. The British government also refused to annul the Rowlatt Act and made amends for the articles in Punjab. Objectives of the non-cooperation movement. At a special session of the Congress held at Calcutta in September 1920, a special resolution was adopted accepting non-cooperation movement as the only option left open for the people of India. The regular session of the Congress at Nagpur in December 1920 ratified this resolution. The non-cooperation movement sought to achieve the following objectives: to attain self-government within the British Empire if possible, and outside if necessary; annulment of the Rowlatt Act and remedying the Punjab wrong. That is, the British government should express its regret on the happenings in Punjab, particularly in Amritsar. Remedying the Khilafat wrong. That is, the British should adopt a lenient attitude towards Turkey and restore the old status of the Sultan of Turkey. Programs. The movement included the following programs: boycott of programs, boycott of government schools, colleges, and courts, boycott of foreign goods, boycott of elections to be held for the councils as suggested by the reforms of 1919, resignation from nominated seats in local bodies, surrender of titles and honorary offices, refusal to attend government functions, Swadeshi programs, popularization of Swadeshi and Khadi by reviving hand spinning and hand weaving, establishment of national schools and colleges and private arbitration court known as panchayats all over India, development of unity between Hindus and Muslims, removal of untouchability and other measures for Harijan welfare, emancipation and upliftment of women. Activities during non-cooperation movement. The nation enthusiastically responded to the call of Gandhiji. The people were ready to practice non-cooperation with the government in every field. Lawyers such as Deshbandhu Chitranjan Das, Motilal Nehru, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, and many others gave up their legal practices. Students left schools and colleges. The Congress boycotted the elections to the legislature by not putting up candidates for the first elections to the council. Charkhas were manufactured for the people to spin cloth. Gandhiji himself started spinning. The Jamia Mia Islamia was established as a national university. The Bihar Vidyapeeth, Kashi Vidyapeeth, and the Gujarat Vidyapeeth were the other national universities that were established with teachers like Acharya Narendra Dev, Dr. Zakir Hussain, and Lala Lajpat Rai. Rabindranath Tagore and many other distinguished citizens of India renounced their titles and awards. Gandhiji returned the medals that were awarded for his work in South Africa. People contributed generously to finance the movement. Shops selling foreign goods and liquor were picketed. Foreign cloth was burnt in markets. In Malabar, the Moplas rebelled against the authorities. This rebellion assumed a communal character when they killed many Hindus. This unfortunate incident gave a severe blow to the Hindu-Muslim unity. The Prince of Wales came to India in 1921. The people boycotted his visit at Mumbai, observed the Hartal, and arranged a meeting on the beach. The mob turned unruly and riots followed. The police opened fire. This turmoil of 3 days killed 59 people. Repression by the government. The government took severe measures to suppress the movement. Under Gandhiji's inspiration, prison lost its terror and became a place of pilgrimage. All important leaders except Gandhiji were arrested and sent to jail. Processions and public meetings were banned. The Khilafat and the Congress volunteer organizations were declared illegal. Unfortunately, the whole movement was abruptly called off on February 12, 1922, at Gandhiji's insistence. following the news of the Chauri Chaura incident. Suspension of the non-cooperation movement. Chauri Chaura. The tragedy at Chauri Chaura, a village in Gorakhpur district in Uttar Pradesh, occurred on February 5, 1922. A procession of about 3,000 peasants marched to the police station to protest against the police officer who had beaten up some volunteers picketing a liquor shop. The police fired at the peasants. This infuriated the demonstrators and they set up the nearby police station on fire, killing 22 policemen who were inside the police station. There were a few violent incidents in other parts of the country. Gandhiji, a believer in ahimsa, was greatly shocked at these incidents and he withdrew the non-cooperation movement on February 12, 1922. This action of Gandhiji of suspending the agitation was severely criticized by leaders like Motilal Nehru and Lala Lajpat Rai. Subhash Chandra Bose called it a national calamity. Gandhiji assured Jawaharlal Nehru, if the thing had not been suspended, we would have been leading not a non-violent struggle. The cause will prosper by this retreat. Nevertheless, everybody respected his decision in view of the great personal influence of Gandhiji. Gandhiji suspended the law-breaking part of the movement and asked congressmen to pay attention to the constructive programs, that is, removal of untouchability, Hindu-Muslim unity, and the popularization of Swadeshi and Khadi. Gandhiji was arrested for propagating sedition on March 10, 1922. He was sentenced to 6 years imprisonment. Gandhiji was released after 2 years because of his ill health. Impact of the non-cooperation movement. The movement failed to achieve any of its three main demands, namely, obtaining Swaraj, obtaining an apology for the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, and solving the Khilafat problem. Gandhiji's promise to achieve Swaraj within 1 year of launching the movement was not fulfilled, but its ultimate gain outweighed the immediate losses. It was a great step forward in the course of the Indian national movement in the following ways. 1. The national movement became a mass movement. The Indian national movement, for the first time in history, acquired a real mass base with the participation of different sections of Indian society, such as peasants, workers, students, teachers, and women. However, the big industrialists, capitalists, and zamindars still remain hostile. Jawaharlal Nehru described non-cooperation as a peaceful rebellion, a most civilized form of warfare, and yet dangerous to stability of the state. British rule. 2. Instilled confidence amongst the people. It generated a desire for freedom and inspired people to challenge the colonial rule. Renowned historian Bipin Chandra has rightly said, out of the experience of this attempt to defy openly the foreign rulers and the government they had set up was born a new sense of self-confidence and self-esteem. 3. The Congress became a revolutionary movement. It transformed the Indian National Congress from a deliberative assembly into an organization for action. It became the organizer and leader of the masses in their national struggle. Thus, the Congress became a force to reckon with. 4. Fostered Hindu-Muslim unity. It fostered Hindu Muslim unity, which could be seen in the merger of the Khilafat issue with this movement. It provided an opportunity to the Congress to bring to urban Muslims into national movement by convincing them that the nation was equally concerned with the problems affecting them. 5. Promoted social reforms. As a consequence, the non cooperation movement, several steps were taken in the direction of prohibition and removal of untouchability. Many national schools and colleges were set up in different parts of the country. The boycott of the foreign goods led to the promotion of Indian handicrafts and industries. Khadi became the symbol of national movement. 6. Spread nationalism to every part of the country. The movement gave a new boost to nationalism in India. At its annual session at Nagpur in December 1920, changes were made in the constitution to the Congress. Provincial Congress committees were reorganized on the basis of linguistic areas. The Congress was now to be led by a working committee of 15 members, including the President and the secretaries. This would enable the Congress to function as a continuous political organization and would provide it with the machinery for implementing resolutions. The Congress organization was able to reach down to villages. Its membership fee was reduced to 4 annas per year to enable the rural and urban poor to become its members. 7. Popularize the cult of Swaraj. The goal of non-cooperation movement was to attain Swaraj within the British Empire, if possible, and outside, if necessary. The Congress realized the nature and value of the popular support, and though the movement failed immediately to attain Swaraj, it definitely came nearer to it.